Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Travel Takedown webinar. We're pleased for you to join us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, just to give you a little background on how these sessions work. We run these each month, so each month we'll take a couple of well-known travel brands. This month, really excited to look forward to seeing a breakdown of two hotel brands, Hilton and Travelodge. So the team have spent time analyzing the customer experience of these two well-known brands, looking at what makes them tick, looking at the opportunities that you as a marketers can take away and hopefully apply to your own digital experiences, or at least contrast and compare with the type of digital experiences that your own companies offer. So this session is around about 30 minutes. We're going to have time for Q&A. The session is recorded and we'll send a copy of this in a couple of days. If you have any questions, there's you can drop this into the Zoom bar on your screen and we will answer these at the end. So I will hand over to my two very smart colleagues, Doug Morris and Katie Green, who will run you through today's takedown of Hilton and Travelodge.
Thank you so much, Mario. So just to set the scene a little bit before we actually have a look at the Hilton and Travelodge websites, wanted to touch on how it is as conversion optimization professionals that we actually make an assessment of these websites in order to identify where they're working well and not so well, and start to draw out some test ideas. And that is that we use what I'm calling, well, I don't think it has an official name, conversion framework. And you've probably seen some of these in the past, but they're frameworks that unpack some of the factors within a website experience that can cause a user to convert or not. And I'm going to talk through why in general you might use them, talk through some of the strengths and weaknesses of one of the most popular ones, which you may already be familiar with, and then introduce you to our anchor framework. And that's the framework that we're going to use for the Hilton and Travelodge website reviews. So why use a conversion framework? They're extremely helpful when it comes to ideation. When you're trying to look at a website and determine where the opportunities are, conversion frameworks, by giving us a set of quite structured and objective factors on which to make that assessment, they really make the process of identifying those opportunities a lot easier. And I think one of the best things about these conversion frameworks is that they're normally looking at things from the perspective of your end users. And so they kind of force you to default to some very user-centric thinking. The one that you've probably, and just touching on briefly when it is within the conversion rate optimization process that you would start to use one of these frameworks. Typically, it would be after you've already conducted some initial quantitative analysis, and that is that you should have some picture of which pages within your funnel or within your website journey are most problematic based on bounce rate, dropout rate, etc., and that you understand some of the characteristics of the users who are dropping out at that point, like what device they're on, are they typically mobile or desktop, etc., what's their marketing channel. And the reason for this is that when I say that conversion frameworks help us to put ourselves in the mind of the user, it's an additional head start towards achieving that if we're not just thinking about ourselves as a website user or prospect generally, but we're actually thinking about ourselves as someone who's arrived as a new visitor from SEO on a mobile device, for example. And then we can really tailor our thinking towards those users in particular. So probably the framework that you may be most familiar with, which is a great one, albeit with some room for improvement, is this LIFT model from Wider Funnel rather. Now convert.com, I believe, that has been around, as you can see, from the date for literally going on 2 decades now. And their framework is essentially, what's nice about it is that they're tying it to kind of a metaphor, so it's more easily understood. And it's essentially that if you have a great your value proposition, what you want to sell is an airplane, as you can see. And if you have too much anxiety or distraction, those are things that prevent your airplane from gaining lift and taking off. And things that help your airplane to take off are relevance and clarity, and of course, urgency can provide some of that turbo fuel as well. And at face value, being able to say, all right, I need to look at my website, this particular spot in the funnel, and think about what could be causing anxiety. As I said, that is a great first step, but there are some things about this that, in our view, can be improved, this lift model. And so some of the drawbacks, in our view, are that one, it is, what it says on the tin. There's not too much more to it other than that depiction. And so while it presents itself as being a kind of objective way in order to assess your website experience, people could view anxiety or value proposition differently, and it doesn't really help you to understand what are the factors behind a great value proposition, or what are factors that could cause anxiety. There's not really any weighting of the importance of these factors relative to each other. So clarity is just as important as anxiety, and that may not necessarily be the case. And as you can kind of tell from looking at the factors, it's most helpful looking at the factors that comprise it. It's most helpful when looking at like single pages where the focus is very much on direct response, driving a conversion immediately. When you're trying to assess an entire journey that a user's going on, it is less helpful. So we have our own framework, which is the Anchor framework. And these are the subject areas of our conversion framework, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail. And then, as I said, we'll do a live takedown where we show you how some of these could be applied. So factor one in our framework is around attention. Are we capturing and holding the user's attention? And so that could be that we're using, from a visual design point of view, that the hierarchy is appropriate, that we're don't have a confusing mess of a page, and instead that we're drawing users' eyes to key areas that we want them to pay attention to, that we're really thinking about optimizing the page above the fold, and that from a copywriting and tone of voice perspective, we're being succinct, writing in a way that really helps the user with their imagination. Navigation. And so factors in the navigation performing well or poorly would be, for example, that the menu structure is clear, it's labeled intuitively to users. Where relevant, you have contextual navigation. So if you're within a checkout, giving indicators as to progress. And of course, things like having a great mobile or responsive experience. We also firmly believe that some of the factors around trust, credibility, et cetera, that the lift model starts to lean into are very relevant, despite the kind of gaps or weaknesses in that framework. And so we also love to see genuine customer testimonials and reviews, badges, awards, and security seals. Particularly, I guess, if your brand is not as strong or well-known, then these sorts of factors can start to persuade users that you are trustworthy to do business with. Hesitation, which I guess would be referred to as anxiety within the lift model. We want to understand what the user doubts are about a particular proposition, what risks they might foresee, and try to address some of these by using FAQs, by actually literally making it less risky, like by providing flexible returns, risk-free trials, and that sort of thing. And then the final two factors are the offer itself. How strong and relevant is the value proposition that you're putting in front of users? Are you communicating it really well by emphasizing key benefits and unique selling points rather than just listing features? And retention, which is something not touched on in the wider funnel framework at all, which is how are you trying to obtain marketing consent? Do you have any rewards or loyalty sort of schemes? this can be another quite powerful conversion driver. So as Mario had alluded to, or not alluded to, said directly, we have had a look using this framework at a couple of well-known hotel brands. And so I'll let Kaylee step in here and we can start to deconstruct their experiences.
Brilliant. Thanks, Doug. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me just share for you. Right, so yes, this is going to be a bit more of a kind of interactive part where we'll just dig through the main journeys for both Hilton and Travelodge. So this is where we've taken a look at the funnel, particularly that they're going to be driving people through, and picking apart each step or stage of that, and looking at where we can apply some of the factors from the anchor model, which Doug has just taken you through. So as we go through this, I will jump from Hilton and Travelodge as we go along so we can make comparisons with the same step in the journey. And it's great kind of as we're going along, if you've got any kind of thoughts yourselves or you had any questions, drop them into the chat and then we can kind of look at those in a bit. But yeah, you know, if you've got any kind of like thoughts or ideas as well as we go through this, then always love having people interact with that. So let's kick off with Hilton. So obviously very, very well-known brand, worldwide brand. But ultimately they are a US company. And so there'll be some interesting things as we kind of go through this experience, looking at it from, you know, someone from the UK, from Europe, and just some interesting observations there themselves as well. But let's kick off with looking at the homepage and thinking about attention. So as Doug kind of mentioned, this is about really being able to capture people's attention, hold their engagement, and ensure that, you know, people are going to be sticky to this journey. So one thing which we can notice about Hilton, obviously reputable brand, a bit more on the kind of luxury side, if you like, in terms of ultimately with some of their prices. And so they're reflecting that quite well through the use of like lots of very clean imagery, really kind of portraying the brand, but then also with the use of that kind of like clean, large imagery, it's promoting a sense of inspiration and looking to grab people's attention almost straight away. So there are kind of like a lot of waypoints, if you like, from the homepage. So they're not necessarily just relying on things such as search. So that kind of then leads into the navigation side of things. And what we can then say about that is ultimately, yes, they've kind of got great use of big inspirational imagery, but ultimately they are, you know, stayed true to the fact of what they want people to do. They've got search very prominently at the top of the page. If I can kind of like pull this out a little bit, so there you can see, yeah, it's quite the focal point of the page. So I guess kind of like good use of kind of clarity and ease for navigation. So one thing I did kind of want to point out here is we know that Hilton are predominantly a well, based out of the US, but obviously they are a worldwide hotel. So just like when we were thinking about navigation, there is an improvement which they could make here. They've ultimately gone with popular destinations to try and make the search a lot easier. But as we can kind of see, a lot of these popular destinations are from the US or Mexico. So there might be an opportunity here where they could optimize this even further when you can recognize geolocation for where someone is searching from. So myself from the UK, is there a list of popular destinations which are closer, for example, in Europe or even in the UK itself? And that's not to say that I might not want to be going to the US, but that could be something which could be tested to actually kind of improve that experience and be a bit more personalized based on geolocation. It's a easy enough to use search bar. So when we're thinking about navigation, it's got everything you would expect when looking to book a hotel. You've obviously got your destination. It's giving you some suggestions. You've got your date picker. You can obviously change for your rooms and your adults. Really simple and very intuitive, you know, based on how we all expect kind of search to be for travel companies. One thing of note here is what we do have within the navigation is the idea around special rates. Now, again, this is going back to being quite US focused. So when we're thinking about this, like government and military rates, that seems very US focused. So again, could there be some geo-targeting optimizations that they can do here when recognizing based on the country of origin? So yeah, and then as we kind of mentioned, navigational wise, it's not just search. They have done more kind of like inspirational navigation through the homepage, and catering for different people in terms of how they might look to navigate a site. People who know what they want versus people who are looking for some more inspiration, if you like. We go to the C part of the anchor framework, so confidence. So what we can see is that there is even though it is kind of a bit further down the page, I do have to scroll a little bit. They've got a really good use of brand logos, so showing how far reaching the company is. They've got a number of like reputable brands, which are all kind of part of the same umbrella. So again, you're invoking that trust with showcasing that, and also in terms of good use of kind of like social proof as well. Hesitation wise, so maybe it's because they believe that people know who Hilton are. They don't really have to say too much about who they are, but there's no real clear value proposition up front on the homepage to like help, I don't know, give a little bit more of a flavor, help alleviate any kind of like that hesitation about the brand and what they stand for. So not potentially very upfront about what they do. And that, that could be something which they could again kind of play on and being a bit more upfront about that. One thing which I did kind of pick out is only a small thing. I think like with hesitation on the homepage, it was very much more focused around navigation rather than, I guess, kind of looking to help alleviate any anxieties, which, you could argue is more likely to come deeper in the funnel when people are starting to make more clear decisions. But there was a mention about that you could do lots of different things within the app. So again, you're potentially kind of getting rid of more secure or security type risk information, so that you can help alleviate any doubt as well on how easy the process will be. Offer wise, I think they have done a good job on being able to address that on the homepage. There's a save more, do more section, as you can see here. So ultimately, it's giving you a lot of ideas about the benefits. You've got a loyalty scheme, you can get money off. And what else do they offer you? And so I thought that came across really, really well. From a retention perspective, wouldn't really expect that of a homepage. Again, happy to be challenged there. But again, that might be something which comes a little bit deeper into the funnel, especially for returning users. But you could argue that if we recognize that you are an existing customer, you're signed in, that maybe that's where you can play with the homepage a little bit more in terms of putting in front more personalized messages, for example, to help understand that you know who they are and they've been there before and they've used you before, more likely to be your loyal customers. So before we just have a little flip over to Travelodge, don't know, Doug, if you had any differing thoughts there.
Yeah, when you said happy to be challenged on something, wow.
He's in there straight away.
Who's going to be challenging you, Kelly? Probably the other person with the microphone. Yeah, look, it's hard to disagree with a lot of things that you said. I think it feels to me, and we'll see the contrast when we look at Travelodge, but from an attention point of view, I feel like the imagery and the search do pop quite well. And it feels like Hilton have designed a homepage that's more about getting you to start thinking about an experience as opposed to something more like transactional or functional, which we're going to see from the Travelodge example. I did also think it was a real pity that there's no geo targeting on the search for a destination. Similarly, some other like things from we could call it navigation point of view that are a bit poor to me are a lack on the Hilton and also the Travelodge of recent searches. And although I haven't looked at the data for Hilton, I have for other travel firms, and typically people are looking at the same time or approximately the same time and location repeatedly. So not giving them an easier route to do that is strange to me. And the one thing I do disagree with a little bit is this your perspective on the fact that how hard they're pushing the benefits of this Hilton honors scheme. Oh gosh, honors loyalty scheme. This seems to be a bit of hesitate to call this, but a strategic play by them to try and push this as hard as possible. And we'll see as we get later on into the funnel that all of the prices default to the honor scheme pricing, for example. They invite you to join the honor scheme just by adding a password when you're checking out. But the annoying thing to me is that it's actually a pretty clunky experience, despite the fact that they clearly care about it so much. So if you go up to the banner that was at the top of the page, which, mind you, I think doesn't show for new visitors, which is quite strange to me, but and you click join for free. We don't need to go through the process, but it takes you to a kind of application form that feels completely disconnected from what you're just doing. And when you do sign up, then it drops you back into an honors scheme oriented page listing how many points you've got and things like that. And I feel like when they have a banner that prominent, probably people just want to join to get access to the special points and pricing and so on, and then hop back to their search journey. And so shifting them into that portal is a bit of a clunky UX to me. But yeah, all in all, I agree with a lot of what you said.
Yeah, no, and I agree with what you just mentioned there. And just, when we're looking at it, again, is this just for people in the US because it's defaulted phone and region to US? Is this scheme available for people from other countries? So again, there's not kind of much information about that. And who it's for.
Totally. Or reinforcement of the benefits on that page as well. Try and mitigate some form dropout.
Great. Thanks, Doug. So let's take a little bit of a comparison with Travelodge then. So, what we would lovingly call budget. And so, quite a contrast potentially with what Doug mentioned there, where Hilton potentially are going for more experiences, where Travelodge are going for more functional. You need a room, you're going out in a different town, city, you need somewhere to lay your head. That's Travelodge. I guess from an attention perspective, one thing which I did like is that right at the top, they've got their tagline, "Gonna get a Travelodge." It kind of does seem to evoke that sense of what I just mentioned about functionality. You're going somewhere, you say, "Oh, we better get a Travelodge." So I think they've drawn on that really quite cleverly. It's a very simple and functional page. So again, it reflects what they're about. And isn't it kind of no messing about? We're not about giving you, this beautiful experience. We're about, making sure that you have a room, a place to stay. What I did find interesting is, so from a desktop perspective, okay, great. They've got the search right at the top. If we kind of zoom, we potentially can't see it because it doesn't recognize from responsive. But if you look at this on a mobile, it actually gives you the key benefits of Travelodge right at the top of the page. And so I found it interesting why they didn't do that on desktop as well. As that was a very good attention grabber. So something which they could do a little bit of improvement there and based on device. Obviously, this page is mainly driven by search, which again is very functional. There's not two other clear navigational routes from the homepage. So this is the main focal point. Get in there, get what you need done. And it's relatively simple to use. Again, it's got everything like what you would expect from a search experience. From a confidence perspective, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's anything, that really jumps out at me in terms of confidence, like when we're thinking about, testimonials or awards. But then again, it's a case of, do they really need that? Are they kind of too well known enough? And again, it might not necessarily have its place on the homepage for Travelodge. Again, I would say there's no like really clear-cut indicators of helping to alleviate hesitation again. However, like they've kind of tied it in with the offer-led side of the framework, in that they do have a lot of different types of offers, and maybe they're using that to help alleviate hesitation. Actually, we might have kind of like a deal for you, dependent on what it is that you want. You can get prizes, and potentially, like with this, although it's buried deep within this carousel, this is about the fact that they're expanding throughout the UK, Ireland, and Spain. They're continuing to grow, so you can trust in them, reputable company, and they're growing still. So that was just something which I observed. Yeah, I mean, I would guess like not too much more that I could tear down using the framework on the Travelodge homepage. As I said, does what it says on the tin. Doug, anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, well, yes, a couple of things.
Okay. No, but yes.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't comment on the carousel, which like there's a special place in hell for designers that make carousels, but this one in particular is so janky. Like if you click the numbers below it, there's like a lag effect before it skips to the next one. The relationship between the slides and the numbers is a bit unclear. I found it quite hard to interact with, and like for anyone who hasn't looked at the data on this, I'd encourage you to test any carousels on your own site versus static content, because I pretty much consistently see that static content performs better. No one sits there waiting 2 minutes for the carousel to scroll through. And yeah, maybe the other, what would be I think like the one thing I will give them props for, which I think is a nice touch, is if you go to the search and click the from date, it's only got one date actually. Oh, it's a check-in date. I see. Well, I was basing this off the desktop rather than responsive experience, but I'm guessing Travelodge must have a lot of like last minute bookings, and the fact that they do have like a today, tomorrow selector within the search for someone who really is just in a hurry, that's a common user journey. That's a nice touch to me. But yeah, as you said, the page does what it says in the tin otherwise.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I tend to use that today and tomorrow quite regularly. If I'm having to hop on into London and need a quick place to stay, that's always really good experience. Great. Okay, so let's go back to Hilton, and now let's go a little bit deeper into the funnel. So let's say that we are going to do a little quick stay in London, and we just need a weekend. And let's find ourselves a hotel from the search results. Okay, so let's go back and use our anchor framework. So when we're thinking about attention, so you've got the key information at the top of the page. You always really want to have a way to be able to sort and filter, being able to edit your search. And so that attention piece there kind of really draws you in. But what really grabs your attention on desktop is the map, and a great way of being able to visualize your search results alongside your list as well. So good in terms of design, that you've got an option for people if they want lists, or they're a bit more visual and they like to see maps and locations in that way. So I thought that was done really well. I would say in terms of like grabbing people's attention, it might necessarily be that's the Hilton brand, but there's not like a great use of like color scheme. It's all just kind of a little bit bland, I would say. But I think really what they've made the star of the show on this page is the map. But when you kind of go to a mobile experience, that does get go behind a button. So with there, they've kind of given that kind of experience for mobile. So it's an either or, which is fair enough because ultimately, of course, you don't have the screen space as what you do on a desktop experience. What I did find a little bit odd is that there's kind of two different types of filters. So when we're thinking about slipping into navigation, when we're looking at the framework, so you've got the filter by brand here at the top. You can filter by price. You've got all filters here, but then you've got more suggested filters down here. Of course, we can say that that is more at the top level. So, you know, looking at price, whereas potentially these are looking more at like the individual benefits that someone might be looking for. But I found that a little bit odd and a little bit clunky. You know, what is it that you're wanting people to filter by? Where did that come from? Is it because these are the most used? What does the data look like for that? So I found that a little bit kind of confusing and probably kind of over-egged. It's good on mobile. It's a good experience on mobile to be able to kind of just like flick up and scroll as well from a navigation point of view. Now, confidence here is where it really starts to kind of kick in. So they ultimately on the listings got the TripAdvisor ratings and also based out of how many reviews that was for. So great for the social proof side of things. And really being able to kind of pull that out and draw that out and to help people make that decision. Hesitation wise, I would argue there's some information up front. Obviously, you've got the link here for hotel details, but then they could do a little bit more here, like drawing some of this information a bit more up front. Like, for example, you know, they've got these icons here for suggested filters to help people visualize some of those benefits up front in the listings. They could include some of that here as well. My biggest hesitation point here was around how they're displaying price. And I think this is a little bit kind of shady, to be honest with you, in terms of they've done it on average per night. So at a quick glance, if you're not really paying attention, you go, oh, okay, it's that amount of money. But actually, no, it's not. This is per night. And they've done a little bit of a small thing here is actually like, shh, no, it's actually £1,000. So I didn't like that from a UX perspective because I don't think that's being honest and upfront. And it'd be interesting to see like whether they had tested that or how that impacts step conversion into the next step, or how it, you know, when people start to filter or they want to sort. But personally, I thought it was a little bit naughty of them. Offers, it is good that they have a sale. However, it's kind of quite a small little icon. And they could really make a lot more of that. Think about it from a visual perspective, from the pricing perspective. So it says like sale or on a sale there, how much am I saving? Where is that information? That leads back into the hesitation side of things again. Retention perspective could kick in here. So they've got this bit here around use points. So again, now they're looking at changing this from the pricing back to their points system. So again, this is good for your returning customers, people who are already part of your loyalty scheme, that you've got the option to be able to search and make a decision on that. However, for people who don't know about this use points loyalty scheme, they're a new visitor, there's not a lot of information about it. So, you know, are you really making the most of that and enticing people to use that at this step in the journey? I would argue no. So again, like a few things which they could look to improve here, but especially like me, the big sticking point here is around the price when leaning into hesitation. Doug, I don't know if you've got anything to add here as well.
A couple of things. I actually quite liked the suggested filters, but that is contingent upon those actually being the filters that you're most likely to have to use. And the idea to me that someone could make a few taps and or a couple of clicks and already have filtered the list to the ones relevant to them, as opposed to needing to spot and go into the filters list that would have a lot of redundant filters as well. I think there's an argument to be made either way on that one. Although this is why we have testing, A/B testing and usability testing, right? In terms of other things, I think that it's the mobile view is quite busy for me when it's responsive. All of the information that's shown above the fold, like it's a lot to take in. So from an attention point of view, I'm not convinced they have that nailed. And one thing I thought was quite interesting, which I had not looked at the desktop view around, is the photos, because I was immediately drawn to the fact that on the the desktop view, that photo gallery is absolutely tiny and there's no way to expand it. Whereas on mobile, the photos take up most of the real estate. And like I would argue at a screen resolution like that, those photos are basically useless. And yeah, I wondered whether just one small test they could do is when people click the photo gallery, which currently does nothing, like to enlarge it, that it could instead trigger the hotel details modal to open up. If you click that for me, Kaylee. The hotel details link in the, which does have the enlarged view of the photos. I think that might be a nicer experience, but yeah, I would say that you had amply covered the other points I would have raised.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's see about the difference in experience with Travelodge for their search results. So again, let's head on over to good old London, and let's go for a little weekend away. Go for Saturday. We'll go for 2 nights, and that's a really good experience as well as part of that search as well, that you can just do a quick click on like 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights. There we go. That's how long I want to stay for. Okay, so some interesting differences here between Travelodge and Hilton. So yes, again, they've made use of the fact that they've got the fact that you can change your search at the top. From an attention perspective, like the real main focal point is on the listings, the search results. They've taken the decision to actually, put a map behind a CTA, and then people can open it out themselves. So ultimately, trying to do that so that, because it's from this design, otherwise this is just right at the top of the page as they land on the page, so you can understand why they took that design decision. And it's there to be used if people want to use it, but that's not necessarily the focal point of the page. I think there's a good use of, so compared to Hilton, yeah, the imagery is slightly a bit more kind of upfront in most cases. But that ultimately, there is no kind of like carousel at the moment up front, or like when you go to a bit more responsive, then you can kind of see that there's more photos there as well. I think the filters are again very functional. That's what it says on the tin, but there's no kind of like upfront suggested ones. So people are going in here. But however, sorry, apologies. We can see kind of like some ones up here. So interesting again to see why they made that decision. So you can understand potentially parking is something which people are very much interested in. But I found it interesting about bar cafe. So people really wanting to hang out in the bar at Travelodge, or it might be very much based around breakfast. But I found that was kind of an interesting observation there as well. The map is a bit fiddly when you open it up. So, from a usability perspective and navigational perspective, that's probably not the best. And I do wonder kind of how many people then are using that map, and does it warrant it still being there? There's a good use of icons. So when you're thinking about, what's included, upfront information, addressing that hesitation, and being kind of like really clear, like, look, here are some of the things which you're going to get here up front, even at this stage in the journey. Again, good confidence. You've got the good use of TripAdvisor ratings there, and how many reviews that's based on. So that's very, very good. Something which I thought wasn't a great experience. So when you're thinking about it from a desktop perspective, you've got, this big, lovely pricing here, really, really clear. This is kind of like your total price. They do have a from, and so again, that might be a little bit confusing and lean into hesitation, like why is it from? But they could give a little bit of upfront information that they might want to have add-ons, and so that's why it's a from price. But here they've got see availability, good use of kind of CTA language. But if we kind of go back to a responsive view, the CTA completely disappears. Now, I know that this is going to be kind of a tab, but and what happens is obviously if you tap on the search result, you go through to the next step. But I just thought that was a very weird decision to then get rid of a CTA, which is what people are kind of conditioned or trained to look for nowadays. So I'd be interested to see like what the step conversion is like from a mobile experience from this page. Then I guess just a little bit thinking about kind of the offer side of things. You've got kind of like the upfront of what this room particular is. You've got things such as last few rooms remaining. So actually maybe that plays into a little bit more of like the urgency side of things. But again, you have to balance this, whether this is going to be a hesitation or not. So being careful with how you present that type of messaging, but there's only kind of a few rooms left. So those are the main points around search for Travelodge. Anything to add in there at this time, Doug?
So much. No, not really, but a few things. One is I actually meant to mention this on the Hilton site as well around reviews. And this is just my personal opinion. This isn't the basis of a test I've conducted, but I do think people are starting to be a bit cynical about companies trying to manipulate them in the way that we are as conversion rate optimization marketers. And I was really disappointed to see that on neither the Hilton or Travelodge website is there an opportunity to actually explore any information about those reviews. And I do feel like as a consumer, and maybe I'm just projecting my own view of the world onto Travelodge customers, which is a danger as a marketer. But I do feel like I often will try and like actually read the reviews, have a look at the 1-star reviews, try and get a realistic picture. And when it's just like we're 4 or 5-star rated with no other information, sets alarm bells off for me a little bit. And the thing that further back up the page in the search, sorry, just more broadly, I'll just say this and then stop. I do like really prefer the Hilton Booking.com Airbnb design as far as like the relationship between the map and the search results, because if you open the map for me, please, Kaylee, like when you click on one of those prices, like there's no relationship between this feature and the results behind it, below it, and it's not pulling in any of the information about the features of that particular hotel either. So all it's providing you really is the location and like the overall price. And I felt like if there was some sort of like filtering that might occur, for example, where you click on that one and the hotel results below are filtered accordingly, that would be a bit more intuitive as a user, rather than needing to click through to this hotel and find it doesn't have some feature I'm looking for. Those were the major things. There's a few other minor complaints I have, like around these tags, like new design or super rooms. Like, what does super rooms even mean? Travelodge. Whoever came up with that definitely hasn't like thought about whether a consumer is going to understand the language they're using. But yes, moving on, I guess, to the we are actually now at 45 minutes, and we have a lot of lovely observations about the further parts of the funnel as well, but perhaps we will need to leave them for the next installment of this webinar, given the amount of time we've used.
Brilliant. Yes. So that was kind of a little introduction to using that framework at, I guess, the top end of the funnels for travel companies. But yes, I mean, if there we can kind of like send around anything around the framework and what we've done today. If people have any more kind of like interest in that or questions around that, then we're always happy to kind of help answer any questions or potentially about how you might be able to use it in your own jobs and day-to-day work. But yeah, thank you so much. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you,
and back to Mario.
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, Doug. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's session. It was recorded, so we'll send this over in a couple of days. I mean, we typically crowdsource the brands that we review and analyze each month. So, you know, if anyone has a specific brand in mind they'd like us to look at next month, just feel free, pick us an email, drop something in the chat bar, whatever your preferred method of communication, let us know, and we're happy to add it to the list of brands we look at. We still haven't decided what we're going to do next month, but we'll probably in the next couple of days run through the options that people send through and yeah, set up a new webinar with the new brands to look at. But in the meantime, thank you to our speakers and thank you to everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.